For decades, the world knew Elvis Presley as the king of rock and roll, the charismatic performer who could make thousands of fans scream with just a hip shake. But what was he really like when the cameras stopped rolling? When the stage lights dimmed and Graceland's doors closed? Priscilla Presley lived with Elvis for years, and her revelations about the man behind the legend will shock you. From his bizarre nighttime habits to his secret fears, from his tender moments to his explosive temper, this is the Elvis nobody saw. The vulnerable, complex, and sometimes frightening man who lived behind the iconic image. What Priscilla discovered about Elvis will change everything you thought you knew about the king. When most of the world was sleeping, Elvis Presley was just getting started. According to Priscilla, Elvis suffered from severe insomnia and had completely reversed his sleep schedule, staying awake until dawn and sleeping through most of the day. This wasn't just a rock star's wild lifestyle. It was a deeply ingrained pattern that controlled every aspect of their life together. Priscilla revealed that Elvis would often wake up at 4 p.m., have breakfast while most people were having dinner, and then begin his day in the evening hours. Graceland would come alive at night, with Elvis holding court in the living room, watching television or playing music until the early morning hours. He surrounded himself with a group of friends and employees known as the Memphis Mafia, who were expected to match his unusual schedule. The reason behind this nocturnal lifestyle was complex. Priscilla explained that Elvis struggled with anxiety and found the nighttime hours more peaceful and private. During the day, fans would gather outside Graceland's gates. Photographers would try to catch glimpses of him, and the pressure of his fame felt overwhelming. But at night, he could be himself without the world watching. However, this schedule took a toll on everyone around him, especially Priscilla. She had to adapt her entire life to his rhythm, missing normal social interactions and struggling to maintain relationships with friends who lived conventional lives. Elvis expected complete dedication from those in his inner circle, and his nocturnal preferences were non-negotiable. Priscilla also revealed Elvis's obsession with watching television, often having multiple TVs on simultaneously in different rooms. He would flip between channels constantly, sometimes watching 3 different shows at once. This wasn't casual viewing. It was almost compulsive behavior that helped him escape from his thoughts and anxieties. The night hours also revealed Elvis's more vulnerable side. Without the demands of performance and public appearances, he would often become philosophical, discussing his fears about death, his spiritual beliefs, and his concerns about his career. These intimate conversations showed Priscilla a man who was deeply troubled by his fame and struggling to find meaning beyond his public persona. Most surprisingly, Priscilla revealed that Elvis was terrified of being alone and would often call friends in the middle of the night just to have someone to talk to, even if the conversation was meaningless. This fear of solitude would follow him throughout his life and ultimately contribute to his dependence on prescription medications to help him sleep. Behind the charming smile and magnetic stage presence, Priscilla discovered that Elvis was an extreme control freak who needed to dominate every aspect of his environment and relationships. This controlling nature extended far beyond typical celebrity demands and bordered on obsessive behavior that affected everyone in his orbit. Priscilla revealed that Elvis controlled what she wore, how she styled her hair, and even how she applied her makeup. He had very specific preferences and would become upset if she deviated from his vision of how she should look. The iconic black hair and heavy eye makeup that became Priscilla's signature look wasn't her choice. It was Elvis's preference, designed to make her resemble his ideal woman. Even more controlling was Elvis's management of their social life. He decided who they would see, where they would go, and what activities were acceptable. Priscilla wasn't allowed to have close friendships with other men, and Elvis would become jealous and suspicious if she showed interest in activities that didn't include him. This isolation was deliberate. Elvis wanted to be the center of her world. The control extended to bizarre details of daily life at Graceland. Elvis dictated mealtimes, what food would be served, and even insisted that everyone eat together as a group. He controlled the temperature in every room, the music that was played, and the television shows they watched. Guests and employees learned to anticipate his preferences and adjust accordingly. Priscilla also revealed Elvis's need to control information about himself. He was obsessed with his public image and would become furious if anyone in his circle spoke to the press or shared details about his private life. This created an atmosphere of secrecy and paranoia, where everyone was constantly watching what they said and did. Perhaps most disturbing was Elvis's control over Priscilla's personal development. He discouraged her from pursuing her own interests or career ambitions, wanting her to be completely devoted to him and his needs. When she expressed interest in dancing or other activities, he would find ways to discourage or prevent her participation. The controlling behavior wasn't always harsh. Elvis could be incredibly charming and persuasive when he wanted something. He would use his charisma and romantic gestures to maintain control, making Priscilla feel special and chosen while simultaneously limiting her freedom. This combination of charm and control created a complex dynamic that was difficult to recognize or escape. Priscilla later understood that Elvis's need for control stemmed from his deep insecurities and fear of abandonment, but at the time she was too young and inexperienced to recognize the patterns or their psychological impact. Despite his controlling nature and explosive temper, Priscilla revealed that Elvis possessed a surprisingly tender and vulnerable side that few people ever witnessed. This gentleness coexisted with his more difficult traits, creating a complex personality that could be both nurturing and demanding within the same conversation. Priscilla described Elvis's incredible empathy and emotional sensitivity. He would often cry during movies, especially if they involved animals or children in distress. He was deeply moved by stories of suffering and would frequently make anonymous charitable donations to families in need. This compassion extended to his treatment of children. Elvis was naturally gentle and playful with young people, often spending hours entertaining kids who visited Graceland. One of the most touching aspects Priscilla revealed was Elvis's relationship with his mother, Gladys. Even after her death, Elvis would often talk to her picture, sharing his concerns and asking for guidance. He kept many of her belongings exactly as she left them and would become emotional when discussing her influence on his life. This deep mother-son bond revealed a man who valued family connections and emotional intimacy. Elvis also showed unexpected tenderness in his relationships with his employees and friends. Priscilla recalled numerous instances where Elvis would notice someone struggling financially or emotionally and quietly provide help without seeking recognition. He paid for medical treatments, education expenses, and family emergencies for people in his circle, often without the recipients knowing the money came from him. In their private moments together, Priscilla experienced Elvis's gentle nature firsthand. He would spend hours talking about his dreams, fears, and philosophical questions about life and death. These conversations revealed a man who was deeply thoughtful and spiritually curious, far removed from his public image as a simple entertainer. Elvis's love of animals also demonstrated his tender side. He would rescue stray cats and dogs, bringing them to Graceland and ensuring they received proper care. He was particularly fond of horses and would spend peaceful hours riding around the property, finding solace in the connection with these gentle animals. Perhaps most surprisingly, Priscilla revealed that Elvis was an emotional romantic who would write her heartfelt letters and poems expressing his feelings. He would plan elaborate surprises and romantic gestures that showed a creative and thoughtful approach to love that contrasted sharply with his public playboy image. However, this tenderness came with expectations. Elvis's gentle nature was often conditional on receiving the devotion and admiration he craved. When he felt unappreciated or rejected, the tender Elvis could quickly transform into someone much more difficult to handle, showing how his emotional vulnerability was closely connected to his need for control and validation. The most heartbreaking revelations from Priscilla concerned Elvis's descent into prescription drug dependency and the paranoia that consumed his final years. What started as legitimate medical treatment for injuries and performance anxiety gradually became a dangerous addiction that changed his personality and ultimately contributed to his death. Priscilla revealed that Elvis's relationship with prescription medications began innocently enough. Like many performers of his era, he initially used pills to help manage the physical demands of his career, uppers to maintain energy for performances, and downers to help him sleep afterward. However, what began as functional drug use quickly spiraled into something much more serious. Elvis had access to virtually unlimited prescription medications through his relationship with Dr. George Nicopolis and other physicians who seemed willing to prescribe whatever he requested. Priscilla watched as Elvis became increasingly dependent on these drugs to regulate his mood, energy levels, and sleep patterns. The charming, tender man she had fallen in love with began disappearing behind a haze of medication. The drugs didn't just affect Elvis's health, they dramatically altered his personality. Priscilla described periods where Elvis would become irrational, suspicious, and emotionally unpredictable. Simple conversations could escalate into explosive arguments, and his paranoia began affecting everyone around him. He became convinced that people were plotting against him and started carrying guns, believing he needed protection from imaginary threats. Perhaps most disturbing was how the prescription drug abuse affected Elvis's relationship with reality. Priscilla recalled instances where Elvis would have conversations with people who weren't there, or become convinced that events had happened that were clearly drug-induced hallucinations. His grip on reality became increasingly tenuous, making it difficult for family and friends to communicate with him. Effectively, the addiction also revealed Elvis's deep denial about his condition. He refused to acknowledge that he had a drug problem, instead insisting that he was taking medication prescribed by doctors. This denial made it nearly impossible for loved ones to intervene effectively or convince him to seek proper treatment for his addiction. Priscilla also revealed the toll this took on their relationship and family life. Living with someone whose personality could change dramatically based on their medication intake created an atmosphere of unpredictability and fear. She never knew which version of Elvis she would encounter, the loving, gentle man or the paranoid, aggressive stranger. The financial cost was enormous as well. Elvis spent tremendous amounts of money, not just on the drugs themselves, but on the lifestyle that supported his addiction, private doctors, enablers, and elaborate schemes to obtain medications. This drug-fueled spending contributed to his financial problems despite his enormous earning potential. Most tragically, Priscilla watched as Elvis's addiction isolated him from the people who truly cared about him, creating a barrier that made genuine intimacy and communication nearly impossible during his final years. Priscilla's revelations about Elvis Presley paint a picture of a complex, troubled man who was far different from his public image. Behind the king of rock and roll was someone struggling with insomnia, control issues, deep vulnerability, and ultimately, a fatal addiction to prescription drugs. These intimate details help us understand Elvis not just as an entertainer, but as a human being dealing with the pressures of unprecedented fame. What do you think about these revelations? Did any of Priscilla's insights about Elvis surprise you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories about music's biggest legends.